There are three jokes in this video today. There is my hair, which hasn't been this long since Hall & Oates were in the charts. There is my legs, which are so white they've become transparent. And there's my colleague Charlie's hat, which is so ridiculous I fear YouTube would ban us if we were to actually show it in shot. What isn't a joke these days, however, is Skoda. Certainly they used to be. In fact, they were the laughing stock way back in the 80s, even though those little rear-engined Estelles were kind of cool in a slightly mini 911-esque ironic way. But since they've been part of Volkswagen Group, well, they've been on top of their game. And now they've entered the EV market with their first full mass production EV, based on the small city car, the Citigo. So, is it any good? Well, let's find out. If the Citigo looks familiar to you, then it should. It's been on sale for a while, and it's Skoda's version of the Volkswagen Group triplets of this, the Seat Me and the Volkswagen Up. Now, Seat and Skoda withdrew their variants of the cars from sale in the UK and then reintroduced them as electric vehicles only with just a 5-door body shell. You can still buy the Volkswagen Up with an internal combustion engine and electric power in 3 and 5-door body shells, but only 5-door on the electric version. There are two trim levels with the Citigo E IV. It's the SE, or this car we have here, the slightly higher specification SEL. These little cars have always been really handsome to my eyes, and whilst the Volkswagen has those very distinctive sort of C-shaped LED daytime running lights, I quite like the front end of the Skoda, the way it sort of ties in with the rest of the Skoda range. Gives it a really sort of grown-up look. And you can also see how far they've pushed the wheels to each end of the car to maximise interior space and also help with the ride and handling, which we'll come on to. Round the back you can see they've really squared off the rear end of the car. You get this lovely sort of squat bum to the car, and they've got this weird kind of spacing of the Skoda badge, which I see a lot of manufacturers are doing these days. Still, the overall shape of the car is a really pleasing little thing. Not cute like a Fleet 500, but it's a really handsome little car, really distinctive, and it really stands out in the marketplace. As I said before, the Citigo only comes as a 5-door only body shell, but that's become quite de rigueur with the small cars these days. Cut down on costs, the rear windows just seem to just pop out rather than wind down. I don't really like that. Don't ask me why. I prefer a window to just wind down into door, and it just shows a little bit of cost saving in my eyes. Still, the rest of the car is fine. As I say, you've got the wheels out at each corner, which gives good interior space. It is a 4-seater only. There's no central mounted seat belt, so it doesn't pretend to be a 5-seat. And you've got nice, easy access to the rear seat's ISOFIX points if you've got child seats. So that's a good thing in my view. The boot itself is quite generous for such a small car. You've got a space of 251 litres with the rear seats up in place and 959 with them folded, and they do split fold as well. Quite a high loading lip, but otherwise it's quite a deep little boot, although you can specify a slightly hard boot floor with underfloor storage and some luggage hooks. Down here you've got this handy little storage tray for the standard Type 2 charging cable, and a little bit like the Zoe, you do have a lot of exposed metal in the car, which shows, I don't know, it's been built to a price, but as we will see later, price is key with this car. How odd is this? A key to start an EV. Now, I've been driving EVs for quite a number of months now, and I have to say, the last time I used a key like this to start a car, it's on my 20-year-old Range Rover. But still, it does start up with a traditional style key. The other quite old-fashioned thing in here as well is the instrument cluster. It's got proper analogue dials, and your battery meter at the side, it looks just like a fuel gauge with a sweeping needle. Quite like that. It's slightly better than the MG ZS that I was running as a long-term test car that had a slightly weird little digital readout that was quite difficult to read. This one's very clear and straight in front of you. You've also got another instrument on this side that shows you when you've got power on or when the car is charging through regenerative braking. The seats, like the Zoes, have this one-piece backrest with moulded head restraint that doesn't really adjust. But unlike the Zoes, you do get height adjustment on them, so finding a perfect driving position is a little bit easier. Now, the wheel also adjusts for height, albeit not for reach. And that's okay, so long as the seat does adjust, certainly for someone of my smaller stature. The only thing I will say is when the wheel is in its right position for me, it cuts off the top of the speedometer, but you can counter that by putting the digital speed display in the centre LCD readout. Now, instead of a dedicated infotainment screen, you get this little cradle up here where you put your smartphone. Now, along with Bluetooth connectivity and a dedicated Skoda app, this is something really worth talking about. Now, for those of you who are familiar to AutoEV, you'll know that I don't like interiors with big screens stuck on them, but this is a really ingenious little device, because it means as up to date as your smartphone is, that's how up to date your infotainment system's going to be. And also as well, the other part of the car that's really interesting is how well equipped it is. It might look a little bit Spartan in here, but this SEL model comes with heated seats, Bluetooth, DAB radio, auxiliary input, multifunction steering wheel, automatic lights, electric door mirrors. I mean, the list just goes on. What else do you need in a small car? The app not only allows you to play multimedia through the car's auxiliary input and across Bluetooth, but it also reads the car's statistics. So in other words, range to empty, your miles to kilowatt that you're actually doing, so your economy, and a really good navigation system. There's a USB port behind the cable as well, behind the cradle as well, for charging the phone whilst you drive. The car develops 80 brake horsepower, so it's fair to say it's not going to be blindingly fast. Still, up to 30 miles an hour, it feels quite brisk, and that's probably what you want for a roundabout town. 60 takes a leisurely 12 seconds, so it's not going to trouble things like the BMW i3S, the Mini Cooper Electric, those type of cars, but that's not really what it's about. The steering, well, the steering's quite nice, a little bit like the Renault Zoe. It does have a lightness to it, and again, that's because it's primarily a city car, but it's not as uncommunicative as the Zoe was at times. It doesn't have that sort of deadness at dead ahead. It's quite nice, it's quite talkative. Again, not as much as the Mini, but that's a hot hatch and this isn't. Where it does better the Renault, and indeed delight quite a lot, is the ride quality. The ride quality of this little car, I think, is fantastic. Even on these 16-inch wheels, you don't get the tyre slap or the patter that you might sometimes think you would, especially over expansion joints and broken surfaces. No, it's actually very, very good. I think if you've come from the previous Citigo with the internal combustion engine car, or the Me, or the Volkswagen Up, with petrol engines, you might find it a little bit firmer, but I'm going to put that down to the batteries. They add a little bit of weight into the car, so obviously that's going to have some sort of effect on it. But actually, the car performs really, really well. Where it's also very nice is actually at motorway speed. I came down to Sussex this morning, gone on the N25 and the A3. It keeps up with modern day traffic. Now, its top speed is not going to earn you a stay at Her Majesty's pleasure, but it certainly is enough to give you a slap on the wrist and a couple of points on your licence. But it doesn't feel, outgunned by other traffic. It feels fine. The fact that other cars around you, big trucks and things, it'll pull out and overtake quite well. As I say, there is a turn of speed, a little briskness to the Skoda, which I really like. It's just one of those small cars that has it's like a little bit of a brio to it, like a little Fiat Panda or a Fiat 500. There's just something about it that really, really sort of like delights me. The other thing that you get with the Citigo is brake regeneration, or as it's known in here as B. I'm assuming that means braking. The transmission lever goes through your normal park, reverse, neutral and drive. And when it's in drive, you move the lever across to the left or the right to go through 3 stages of aggressiveness of your brake regeneration. And again, all 3 settings are quite pleasant. You soon get used to them, you just set it up how the ones you like. But there is a further 4th one for that really almost one pedal driving, and that's by pulling the gear lever back from D into B. And it tells us now on the dash that we've got it in level 4 brake recuperation, and it's at this level obviously you get the really aggressive sort of like pull up and stop, and again it bleeds in well. And I think once you get used to it roundabout town, or even in stop go traffic on the motorway, it's quite easy to use and it's actually quite pleasant. I really like brake regeneration, but the fact that you can turn it off so that when you're on the motorway, when you're not in stop-start traffic, what you really want is the car to coast. So that's when it's going to be at its most efficient. So by putting it back into drive and taking the regeneration completely off, you're going to get that ability. And that's a really well engineered solution, I think, from Volkswagen Group on this, and Skoda. Really, really well thought out. Now here we get to the good stuff. This car that we've got here today is an SEL model, so it's the top of the range model in the Citigo E IV, and yet it's £23,395 before the government grant, which currently stands at time of filming at £3,000. Now I don't want to trivialise money, but that puts this car on the road at £20,000. Now that's still a lot of money, of course it is, but it puts the little Citigo E IV £5,000 ahead of anything else on the market that's even remotely comparable. And if you want it even cheaper, you could opt for the SE model. Okay, you're going to do without things like the CCS charging and the nice 16-inch alloy wheels, but even that car still gets DAB radio, lane assist, and a few other more lovely little features. Let's put that into context now, because most people don't really buy the cars outright these days. So with a reasonable deposit, you're probably looking at less than £300 a month for this car. Now think about how much money you spend on your SUVs, on school run, taking them to the railway station. Doesn't this make much more sense? Now it's hardly surprising that when I spoke to Skoda the other day, the Citigo E IV is sold out for this year. There's now over a year's waiting list for the little car, and I can see why. Now, naturally, the main competition for the Skoda Citigo is probably going to come from within its own sibling group, which is the Seat Mii and Volkswagen E-Up. If you want to move away from this size of car, then obviously you're moving up in size, but you are going to be moving up in price. £25,000 is where the Mini Electric and the Renault Zoe start, and you're going to be nearer to £30,000 before you're at the Peugeot E28 and the Vauxhall Corsa E. So maybe at £20,000, the natural competition for this car is a used EV. So here's what we like about the Skoda Citigo E IV. The value for money that it gives, the way it drives, the good equipment level on the SEL trim, decent range for what it is, and its looks. We don't like, it takes a little while to set the connectivity up, having to pay for CCS and other charge cables on the base SE model. The waiting list, but not a lot else. There are fewer motoring pleasures that I like than a good, well-engineered small car. The original Fiat Panda, the original Fiat Uno and Punto, the revised Rover Metro and the Mark III Volkswagen Polo were all cars in point. These were cars that were better than they actually had a right to be. And now we can add another one onto that list. Now it's fair to say that any of the three Volkswagen Group triplets could have taken the plaudits, but it's the Skoda Citigo E IV that we have here today, so it carries the gong away. There's a genuine honesty about this car, and that's why I love it so much. There are very few compromises to be made with this car. The fact that it started out life as an internal combustion engine car and is now a full electric vehicle makes that victory taste even sweeter. No, they've genuinely done a brilliant job. It shows how far small cars have come, and as we've seen before, all of these small cars are making fantastic EVs. No, the Skoda Citigo E IV has certainly won its way into our hearts and has become, in our view, one of the best EVs currently available on sale today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
So, you've watched our video. It's now my job to tell you to like and subscribe and press the little bell button to receive notification of when our next video is uploaded. Sorry, what's that? You want more than just videos? Okay, did you know that AutoEV is also a website? That's right, autoev.co.uk. Not only is it all the latest news, reviews and musings, including motorsport from the electric vehicle world, but we've got literally hundreds of used electric vehicles for sale from dealers up and down the country.